If you're putting together your resume right now, there are a handful of things sitting on that page that are quietly costing you interviews, and you probably have no idea they're doing it. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what to cut. Hey, it's Dre. I've spent a lot of time around corporate hiring rooms, watching how decisions actually get made before a candidate ever sits down for a first conversation. And one thing has stayed true no matter the industry. Your resume is doing more work than you think. And most of that work happens in about 7 seconds. In that window, a hiring manager isn't reading your whole story. They're scanning for reasons to keep going or reasons to move on to the next candidate in the stack. That's exactly why the small stuff, the stuff most people never think twice about, ends up mattering so much. Before we get into it, if you want more of this straight talk career content, hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because we cover this kind of thing every week. Here's the reality of a tight job market. Your resume isn't just a summary of your career, it's the very first impression you make on a hiring team, and it's often the only thing standing between you and a phone screen. So today, we're going to walk through the things you want to strip out of your resume if you want it to actually work for you instead of against you. First up, ditch the bright colors and heavy graphics. A splash of color on a job title or a section header is fine. Stick to something like navy or a deep charcoal. Maybe you can get away with a muted accent color if you're feeling bold, but keep it there. The second you start adding charts, graphs, or clip art, you're pulling attention away from the thing that actually matters, which is whether you can do the job. Recruiters and hiring managers are trained to judge a resume as a professional document, and flashy design reads as a distraction, not personality. The one exception here is if you're in a visually driven field. So if you're a graphic designer or an art director, some creative flair is actually expected, maybe even required. For everyone else, safe and clean wins. Second, lose the skill level graphics. You've probably seen this. Someone lists a skill and then puts a little bar or a row of dots next to it to show how proficient they are, like 4 out of 5 filled in. It feels like it's showcasing your ability, but here's what it actually does. If a hiring manager is scanning for a specific skill and sees you've rated yourself a 3 out of 5 on something they consider essential, you've just talked yourself out of an interview before you ever got the chance to explain that number in person. Let the interview process be where your proficiency gets assessed. On the page, just list the skill. Don't quantify your own weaknesses for someone else to hold against you. Third, get rid of multi-column layouts. This one's a formatting issue with real consequences. A lot of resumes still get run through an applicant tracking system before a human ever opens them, and these systems typically scan left to right, top to bottom. When your resume is split into columns, some of these systems only pick up the first column and miss everything sitting in the second or third. That means half your skills and experience could be functionally invisible, both when you apply now and later if a recruiter goes back into that system months down the line searching for candidates with specific keywords. And that second scenario happens more than people realize. You might apply, not get the role, and then 6 months or a year later, a recruiter runs a fresh search for exactly the skill set you have. And if that skill was buried in a column the system couldn't parse, you simply never show up, even though on paper you'd have been a great fit. You want to be as discoverable as possible, and a single clean column, top to bottom, is the safest way to guarantee that. Fourth, drop the photograph. This one is regionally specific, so if you're outside the US and a headshot is standard practice where you live, follow your local norm. But if you're applying for roles in the United States, including a photo tends to signal to a hiring team that the application may be coming from outside the country, and it can trigger unconscious bias before your qualifications even get read. There is also, frankly, no upside. A photo doesn't tell an employer anything about whether you can do the job, so leave it off unless it's genuinely expected where you're applying. Fifth, cut anything that reveals a personal identifier you don't need to disclose. That includes your age, your marital status, whether you have kids, your religion, or anything else that falls into a protected category. I've seen resumes that flat out state married, 2 children. And while it might feel like it humanizes you, all it really does is hand a hiring manager information they're not supposed to be using to make a decision. And unfortunately, some will use it anyway, even without meaning to. Quick disclaimer here. This is general career guidance based on how hiring teams tend to behave, not legal advice. So if you ever suspect you've been screened out because of a protected characteristic, that's a conversation for an employment attorney, not a YouTube video. On your end, the fix is simple. Keep the resume strictly about your work. There is no version of a marital status or family situation that makes you better or worse at doing the job. So don't hand anyone the opportunity to weigh it, even unconsciously. Sixth, fix your email address. I still see resumes come through with addresses that look like they were created in high school. Something like partyanimal22 at whatever provider. If that's you, take 5 minutes and set up a clean account using some version of your actual name. It costs nothing, and it removes one more thing a hiring manager could quietly judge before reading a single bullet point. Seventh, stop listing your full home address. All a hiring team needs is your city and state. You don't need to disclose your exact street, partly because nobody's mailing you anything, and partly because it opens the door to unconscious bias around commute distance, especially if someone before you left that role because of a long commute and the hiring manager is now sensitive to it. If you work remotely, you might think location doesn't matter at all, but it still does, because time zone alignment with the team matters, and in some cases, so does whether the company is even set up to legally employ someone in your state or country. City and state is enough, nothing more. Eighth, trim your work history down. In general, hiring teams are primarily interested in the last 10 years of your career, and honestly, the last 5 carry the most weight. Unless a posting specifically asks for 2 decades of experience, or you're applying for a senior executive role where a longer track record is the point, older roles usually just take up space without adding value, since the skills and tools from that far back have often changed anyway. Think about it from the other side of the table for a second. A hiring manager isn't trying to piece together your entire career story. They're trying to answer one question quickly. Can you do this job right now, based on what you've done most recently? Anything older than a decade is rarely going to move that needle, so let it go. Ninth, cut the internal jargon and acronyms. If a hiring manager outside your specific company wouldn't immediately understand a job title or an abbreviation, it's not helping you, it's creating friction. You want your resume to be understood at a glance, not decoded. Translate anything overly specific into language a broader audience in your field would recognize. 10th, simplify your education section. You don't need to name the specific school or program within a university, just the institution and the degree. The same goes for a minor. It's a nice keyword to have, but not something worth building out a whole section around. And if you're more than a few years removed from graduation, drop your GPA entirely. Early in your career, when you don't have much else to point to, it can help fill out the page. But past roughly the 3-year mark, nobody's asking, And if it ever does come up, that's a conversation for the interview, not a line on the page. 11th, and related, drop your internships once you're a few years into your career. They're useful early on to show initiative and relevant exposure, but once you've built actual professional experience, they stop counting toward your total years and start looking like filler. 12th, remove the line that says references available upon request. It's assumed. If an employer wants references, they'll ask you directly. And honestly, fewer employers are checking them as thoroughly as they used to. That line is just wasted space on a document where every line should be earning its spot. 13th, never include your salary history or your expected compensation. The moment you disclose what you made previously, you've given an employer a ceiling to negotiate down from instead of up from. If they have more room in the budget than your last role paid, disclosing that number just handed them permission to lowball you. Compensation conversations belong in the interview process, not on the page. 14th, skip universal software skills that are basically assumed at this point. Things like basic word processing or spreadsheet programs. Every professional level candidate is expected to have baseline familiarity with those tools, so listing them doesn't differentiate you, it just uses up space you could spend on something specific to you. The same logic applies to generic soft skills like leadership or organization. Don't just claim them, demonstrate them inside your actual accomplishment bullet points instead. And 15th, get rid of the tired buzzwords. Phrases like team player, fast learner, hard worker, self-starter. Every single candidate applying for that role could claim the exact same thing, and none of it is specific enough to mean anything. If you've made it this far into the video, I'm going to guess you already know that generic language doesn't move the needle. So spend that space on something that actually differentiates you. One more before we wrap up, and it's an easy one to forget about because it's been standard practice for so long. The career objective statement at the top of the page. Something like, seeking a challenging position where I can utilize my skills and grow professionally. It feels like a natural way to open, but it tells a hiring manager absolutely nothing they couldn't already assume, since obviously you're seeking the position. That's why you applied. Instead, if you want something up top, use that space for a short summary that actually says who you are professionally and what you bring, framed around the role you're going after, not a generic statement about what you're hoping to get out of it. Now, if you're sitting there thinking about your own resume and realizing it's checking a few of these boxes, don't panic. This is genuinely one of the most common and most fixable problems in a job search. If you've been applying to role after role, you're reasonably qualified for the positions you're going after, and you're still not getting callbacks, 9 times out of 10, it's not you, it's the document representing you. A resume with even 2 or 3 of these issues can quietly get filtered out before a human ever really considers your background. The fix isn't complicated, it's just intentional. Strip the noise, keep the formatting simple, keep the content relevant and recent, and let your actual accomplishments do the talking, instead of decoration, buzzwords, or information nobody asked for. Every line on that page should be earning its place, and if it isn't clearly helping a hiring manager say yes to a conversation with you, it's probably worth cutting. If this helped you spot something on your own resume, let me know in the comments which one of these surprised you the most. I'm always curious which of these people don't realize they're doing. And if you want to go deeper, next week I'm breaking down exactly how to write resume bullet points that actually get read, the kind that turn a skimmed resume into a scheduled interview. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and I'll see you in the next one.